What's going on, guys? This week's video is going to be geared more towards small business owners. We're going to start off by doing a brief overview of New Jersey sales tax. After that, we're going to move into talking about sales tax exemptions. And we're going to talk about the different types that are available and the different types that you might encounter as you conduct business. Um, After that, we'll talk about how to maintain adequate records so that you can make sure you properly document your sales tax exemptions in the event that you're the buyer or the seller. Um, and then finally, we'll wrap it up with talking about how you can be proactive about making sure you're ready in the event that you do get audited. All right, let's get started. All right, so brief overview on New Jersey sales tax. New Jersey imposes a tax on receipts from most retail sales that include personal property, specified digital products, and certain services that aren't specifically exempt under the New Jersey Sales and Use Tax Act. The tax rate is 6.625%, unless you're in a UAZ, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Um, so basically, if you sell a good or service in New Jersey, you have to collect and remit sales tax to the state. Um, you have to remit sales tax monthly, and then you have to file quarterly returns. Um, they also set up what's called urban enterprise zones, or UEZs. And basically, there's 37 cities or municipalities throughout the state that are designated as UEZs, and these are economically distressed areas. Um, and essentially, what happens is if you're a business that operates in one of these zones, you're able to participate in the urban enterprise zone program, and you can charge your customers half the sales tax rate, which is 3.3125%. There are certain, criteria that have to be met in order to charge that sales tax rate. But as long as you're approved and you're in the program and you meet all the criteria, you can charge your customers the reduced rate. All right, so New Jersey sales tax exemptions. So New Jersey has a series of exemption certificates. Each has a specific purpose, and you use them to document when and why you waive sales tax. The most common types of exemption forms that you probably encounter in business are the ST3, ST4, and ST5. And we're going to go over those in detail in a moment. But basically, what you do with these exemption certificates is if you're the seller, you want to make sure that you collect these from the purchaser as long as they're completely and properly filled out. Um, as long as you have them on file with the sale as your documentation as to why you didn't charge sales tax, that relieves you of any responsibility of collecting and remitting sales tax, even if it's later discovered that the exemption was falsely claimed. So that's a big thing to remember. So always make sure that you have your exemption certificate on file so that it relieves you of responsibility for having to collect and remit sales tax. And this even holds true if it's later found out that the purchaser claimed the exemption falsely. Um, Basically, what this means is the everyday taxpayer and business owner isn't responsible for interpreting everyone's sales tax exemptions. So, main thing, just to drive this home, remember, keep your exemption certificate on file for a minimum of 4 years. Make sure it's properly and completely filled out, and then that relieves you of any responsibility from having to collect and remit sales tax. All right, so next thing we're going to go over common types of sales tax exemptions. Um, so Form ST3, this is called the resale certificate, and basically it's used by businesses for transactions where the items being purchased are going to be resold again to another consumer later. Um, the way the New Jersey sales tax law is set up, um, each item being purchased should only be subject to sales tax once. So what that means is either the the middleman is going to pay the sales tax or the end consumer is going to pay the sales tax. But either way, it should only be charged once. So most times, businesses like retailers, mechanics who are buying auto parts for their customers' cars, restaurants, um, other businesses like that, they're gonna provide the ST3 to their vendors so that they don't have to pay sales tax on those goods. So that kind of, cuts down on their costs. And then they'll pass that through and they'll charge sales tax to their end consumer. Um, Next is the ST4. So the ST4 is a form that can really be used by any business that is participating in an activity that's specifically excluded under the New Jersey Sales and Use Tax Act. Um, if you look at the second page of this form, they give you directions, and then at the bottom of the page, they'll give you a whole list of like the common types of exemptions that are usually claimed. Um, the most common ones that I've seen is when you see the sale of machinery that's to be used in the production of raw materials. So raw materials would be like, sand or glass or, stuff like that that would be used to produce other goods. Um, any expenses related to R&D that would fall under it. And then also like renewable energy, like solar panel installation is big right now. So that would be, you would use an ST4 for that as well. Um, Finally, the last one that you would see that's most common is Form ST5. So these are issued specifically to nonprofit organizations, mostly 501c3s. So what happens is if you're a nonprofit, you'll file your Form 1023, you'll get your exemption letter from the IRS, and then from there you can go to New Jersey and you'll fill out what's called an REG-1E. And basically, what this will do is you'll claim your exemption based on your nonprofit status. You'll submit all your documentation, and then the state will issue you this form. And then you'll be able to use this form to waive sales tax on anything that you purchase. All right, so next thing we're going to talk about is maintaining adequate records if you're the buyer or the seller. So, if you're the buyer, it's likely that you're purchasing items under the exemption to provide a good or service to your customer. So, what you should do in that situation is you should go to your customer and you should ask for an exemption form that you can then use as evidence as to why you're claiming the exemption from your vendor. So, basically, the customer will fill it out completely and accurately. You'll keep that on file for a minimum period of 4 years, and then that'll be your evidence as to why you're claiming the exemption from your vendor in the event that you get audited. Now, if you're the seller, we kind of already touched on this previously, you're going to want to make sure that you have a complete and accurate sales tax exemption filled out for each sale that is made where you didn't collect and remit sales tax. And you're going to want to make sure that you have these on file for a period of 4 years. As we stated earlier in the video, it's really important to make sure that you have these on file because it relieves you of any responsibility for having to collect and remit sales tax, even if it's discovered later that the exemption was falsely claimed. The last thing I'll say about this is there are blanket exemptions available that are valid for a period of up to 4 years. And the blanket exemptions can be used for when you're providing the same type of good or service that's exempt from sales tax over and over again so that you don't have to do it for each individual transaction. Okay, we're going to wrap things up here. Um, Real quick, just want to go over what you should do in the event that you do get audited by the state. So the first thing I would say is you should be proactive before you even know if you're getting audited or not. And what I mean by that is I would recommend altering your business processes so that you can make sure that you're maintaining adequate documentation as you go so that it makes it easier once you get to the sales tax audit. And it's also just going to ensure that you're in compliance and you're doing things the right way. Um, so like one trick that I like to recommend to my clients who use QuickBooks or really any bookkeeping software nowadays, you're able to attach documents to your invoices that you're sending to your customers. So what I always tell my clients is just if you have the sales tax exemption certificate, just attach it to your invoice in QuickBooks or whatever software you're using. And then when you go to get audited, if they want to look at that invoice, your evidence will just be right there. So that's just like a quick little shortcut to help you out. Um, Next thing I'll say is that if you do get notified that you're gonna be audited, my advice would be put your best foot forward to provide the most adequate information and the most complete documentation you can to the auditor. I find that it's better to be upfront and honest and um, basically give them the documentation in an organized manner, and just make their job easier. And in the end, they'll probably make your life easier. So that kind of goes hand in hand with being proactive, right? You're not going to really be able to provide complete and organized information unless you maintain complete and organized information. So the two kind of go hand in hand. The last thing I'll say is if you're undergoing a sales tax audit and you're not a CPA or an attorney, I would recommend engaging a professional, whether it be an accountant or an attorney. Mostly just because sales tax rules and regulations can be complicated. And if you're not an expert on them and if you don't deal with them every day, it can be hard to navigate an audit on your own and you might stub your toe. So, um, I would recommend engaging a professional if you're going to undergo a sales tax audit through the state. But, on the flip side, if you feel comfortable about it and you understand the exemptions and you understand all the rules and regulations, you can certainly do it on your own. So that's it. I appreciate your guys' time as always. Please like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. And, if you have any questions, please reach out. The contact information is at the end of this video. Thanks, guys.